I was fascinated by Expedition 33 from the day I watched the reveal trailer. The bleak setting, the look of a world hit by a disaster with the warped Eiffel Tower as the centerpiece of this destruction, the fact that it was a brand new IP from Sandfall Interactive, a new studio, and the turn-based high-budget single-player game. It felt fresh. I avoided any new info about the game and jumped into the game at launch with minimal knowledge, seeing that it was now the highest rated game of the year. Before I get into this review, Expedition 33 Clair Obscur, as the store page calls it, is an evolution of JRPGs. And well, I don't really play JRPGs. Not because I dislike them as a concept, but because I am much more of a CRPG guy. So if I seem impressed or more likely annoyed by something that is common in JRPGs, you now know why. Also, my French pronunciation is utter shit, so you will have to forgive me for butchering a few words. The game starts in Lumiere, a city all dressed up in flowers and in a festive mood. We open with Gustav, the player character, staring at the monolith in the distance. He is joined by Mile. Mile is a 16-year-old girl and Gustav is somewhere between a father and a brother figure to her. They talk and joke around as they make their way to the dock.
I can't believe Sophie already turned 33. She looks so much younger than you.
Thanks.
And Gustav joins his old girlfriend, Sophie. It's clear that they still love each other and their interactions are really sweet.
You know, I'm sorry that... I miss you too.
Okay.
You go.
No, you.
You know how I feel. I wish things had been... You know, I often think... Another path, you know, another future.
Still can't finish your sentences, can you?
Yep, that hasn't changed.
Together they travel around the city and enjoy themselves, but there's a sense of finality to it all. We know that even if it starts with a joyous celebration, the day will end with grief and loss. Some people are bitter and angry, some people are drowning out their sorrows by drinking. Others have decided to enjoy their last day with their loved ones. But soon it's time for the painters to paint a new number on the monolith. Cruelly bringing forth the death of everyone corresponding to that number. Gommage, they call it. As the gommage comes, Sophie slowly vanishes into a fleeting bunch of flower petals, while Gustav holds her hand as the petals fly away. And he breaks down. But Gustav doesn't want to just sit in Lumiere moping as his own gommage draws closer. He's part of the Expeditioners, Expedition 33 to be exact. The Expeditioners are a group from Lumiere who goes over to the continent to stop the gommage from ever happening again. They leave each year after the gommage, and even if none of these groups have ever survived, many of the people, unable to just slowly wait for their own death, leave to fight. Whatever small chance there may be of actual success. The expedition leaves full of energy and determination. They want to make sure the painters can't paint another number ever again.
Expedition 33.
But as their ship approached the coast, an ominous atmosphere overtook the surroundings. The first encounter was with an old man, someone who should have been gommaged away decades ago.
Which expedition are you from?
It was a slaughter. After getting knocked out, Gustav wakes up, injured and alone on a shore. And there ends the prologue and begins Act 1. Gustav. The prologue is excellent. In a short time, it manages to showcase the quality of the writing, the great art style, and the unique look of the game. It introduces this really likable relationship between Gustav and Sophie. It shows you the town and its inhabitants, shows the fun dynamic between Gustav and Mael. So when the Gomage finally happens, it's absolutely devastating. The game manages to show what's at stake back at Lumiere with Gustav's apprentices and then brutally shows the immense danger and almost insurmountable challenge ahead of them. It's just an excellently paced piece of storytelling. Gustav manages to find the rest of the survivors.
Wake up, Gustav.
First Lune, then he realizes that Mael is still alive and finding her energizes him. Finally, the group is complete with Ciel. Now they can explore the continent together and figure out a way to stop the paintress. The continent is a world of wonder, filled with unique and fun creatures like the Gestrels, a childish but fight-crazed group of magical beings made of paintbrushes, or the scholarly Grandists, who even when faced with the threat of Nevrons, they never fight. But exploring always carries a somber undercurrent. The dozens of expeditioners that landed have been reduced to a small bunch of survivors. Everywhere we go, we are faced with the grim ends faced by the previous group of expeditioners, frozen in the exact pose they died in. If how the game opens hasn't made it clear so far, it's a pretty bleak and depressing experience. But it's not hopeless. Not everyone is dead. Every single victory, every teammate we find, every weapon we acquire is hope. Hope that we can push through. The death of the expeditioners before us will not be in vain. We take their knowledge and we move forward.
We can't bring anyone back. But I thought we can keep their spirit alive by pushing forward. And at least there's 3 of us now. The mission hasn't changed.
Tomorrow comes.
Tomorrow comes.
Every Nevron we beat, every step we take closer to the Empress's domain in the monolith, anything we learn that makes the whole team stronger is a victory to be celebrated. They can't stop and won't stop, for the sake of those who come after. This is what made the first act of the game so strong and engaging. Then there's the world building. It doesn't take the approach of overwhelming detail about everything everywhere with large amounts of exposition. The world building happens naturally through conversations and exploration. Whenever it introduces something new about the world to the player, the characters don't just go and explain it, but talk among each other as they would normally as part of this world. And the game treats the player with enough respect to let them put 2 and 2 together. The character writing and dialogue in this game is particularly noteworthy. It's a small cast of characters, but everyone has their own unique personality, and their way of talking is pretty distinct. The conversation aren't 2 people monologuing at each other. While talking, they're sometimes lost for words. There are awkward pauses. In arguments, they talk over each other. There's a natural flow to the dialogue, which makes the conversations really engaging.
No. Not yet. Protocol is to regroup at the rally point and wait 3 days. This message feels off. If it was an expeditioner, they would have stayed here. Everyone knows the protocol.
Right, but they may have been in danger. Maybe this location has been compromised. Things change in the field.
There's a reason.
Protocol doesn't cover every contingency. You know that.
And the characters themselves are really well written, and we get to know more about their histories and personalities throughout the game. Someone like Lune, who when we first meet seems outright cold, only talking about what to do next, how to progress the mission, seemingly unaffected by the deaths. But later we realize she is not just a cold-hearted woman. Letting the rational part of her brain take over in these traumatic circumstances is just part of how she processes the world and copes with grief and loss. And it ties into how she grew up in a family of researchers entirely focused on results. And there's this level of quality in the writing throughout the game. The well-directed cutscenes also enhance the storytelling, moving seamlessly between showing the minute emotions on the characters' faces and their body language and the grand scale of the continent and the various enemies they will face. There's also strong uses of filters and effects that adds a layer of depth to what are already some really cool shots. Though there are issues with the cutscenes in this game, there's the performance issues. The game looks great and runs well normally, but the cutscenes always have a degree of stutter. I was wondering if it was my PC, but it's a common problem. The technical issues aren't just limited to the cutscenes either. In a lot of the game, there is noticeable ghosting. Things like trails behind Miles' hair, or Luna's floating legs while moving around. Even some environments have trails behind things like particles and leaves. And this isn't the settings issue either. I have tried all kinds of combinations and anti-aliasing modes, but nope, it's always there. And weirdly, it's more prominent in native DLSs rather than upscaling from below 1080p. It's a bit weird. But I guess that's just Unreal Engine now. It's not that massive of an issue, but it's a shame because the game is gorgeous otherwise. It doesn't really have the fidelity of the best, and it doesn't need to. It's a AA game made by a moderately sized team of French developers and a Korean animation studio. And well, I would take a game that focuses on a strong, well-defined art style over that fidelity any day. There's a vibrant, painterly quality to the visuals. The various filters and fog add an almost ethereal look to the game. The environments are often characterized by strong shapes created by imposing structures in the distance. The surroundings are filled with some distinctive looking objects or flora, illuminated by light rays streaming through. It could easily have been too visually busy, but the game does a great job of having various focal points in these different areas that draw the eyes as we explore. The areas themselves are drastically different from one to the other. Each area has its own unique color palettes, each creating equally vivid images. Even the ground is rarely a dull grey or brown. We have an area that is simultaneously both underwater and not, filled with corals and kelp rising all the way to the sky as shoals of fishes swim past. We have a forest dyed red by the colors of fall mixed with white stone and patrolled by ceramic statues, both living and dead. And each of these areas also have enemies that fit perfectly with the theme, as they feel like part of the environment. And the designs of these enemies are also really well done, from the stone guardians of the starting area to the various marine flora and fauna inspired enemies. And also an enemy floating with the bomb as well. And yes, that actually makes sense with the area. And the vast variety in the various vistas across the different locations hasn't prevented the sense of cohesion in the art style, from the great environments to the character and enemy designs and some of the best boss designs I have seen in any game, to the stylish UI, direction and some really great pieces of visual storytelling. It all comes together nicely. The visuals are a huge part of what makes the combat so fun as well. The attacks from both the enemies and the player party are so fluid, from the light swipes of a combo to strong attacks, all have detailed and unique animations. And that's true for all 100 plus attacks the party members have and the hundreds of animations for the enemy attacks. And these combat animations aren't just for show either. The combat, while turn-based, the enemies do attack in real time, and these attacks can be dodged or parried. And with a variety of attack animations present, it's essential to watch and learn the correct timing for those, especially for delayed attacks or combos. Dodges are low risk, low reward option, a bit too low reward as they just make the fight way longer. Parries on the other hand require much more precise timings but lead to a strong counterattack, which are always satisfying to land as the game slows down to show the devastating impact. The mix of real-time actions in turn-based combat that Expedition 33 does was a major flaw in both of these systems. Combat encounters in RPGs often end up feeling mediocre in cases of real-time first third-person games because it's hard to design and balance a large enemy roster and it's hard to use intricate spells or attacks in-game. While in turn-based combat, it's easy to feel a bit detached as it feels more like I'm commanding the character instead of playing as them, and what happens next I just wait and watch while relying on luck for critical hits. Here the system has the tactics of turn-based while feeling like I'm involved with the fighting at a ground level. And there is some fun strategy involved in these fights. Weapons have their own unique damage types and so do individual skills. And there's a large number of these skills. Some skills work better after a bit of setup, some are more of a support skill and some a mix of both. Then there's the whole system of Pictos and Luminas. Pictos contain massive stat boosts but also have a secondary effect that can range from action points while dodging or higher base attack damage to being able to play twice in a row for every turn. This is the system where the main creativity and customization lies. You can build a high-speed glass cannon or a tank support just by tinkering with different combinations of the different characters in your party, and you can mix and match to create a team that best suits your combat needs. And you can even do a bit of both. You get hundreds of Lumina points for everyone, so you can keep stacking to quite easily multiply your damage output by ludicrous numbers. All party members have a couple of mechanics that are unique to them. For example, Monoko collects legs from other Nevrons and learns how to take their shape and use one of their moves in combat. He also has a wheel where if the wheel lands on a particular part, it causes the corresponding attacks to get much stronger. Keeping in mind all these different mechanics is what makes the turn-based combat really engaging. I do wish there was more focus on things like weaknesses. The game introduces these early on but never really dives deep in them. And another thing I would have liked the game to have is a heavier use of status effects. There's a couple fights like Serene where the status effects are used effectively, but beyond this silence which prevents the use of any skills, I barely felt hindered by them, even on the highest difficulties. I wish those were a bigger part of the game. Another thing I would have liked to see more of is the use of mechanics where certain enemies absorb and heal or nullify certain types of damage, but it's pretty rarely used. My one major criticism about the gameplay is the level design. The levels are basically linear with some optional paths. Now these levels reward exploration heavily with Pictos, weapons and chroma, which is this game's currency, and even a sneaky boss fight here and there. The problem with the levels is that the progression isn't interesting and levels don't really have memorable layered structure that interconnect or open new pathways in clever ways. As these enemies can't really attack outside of combat, most of the combat encounters take place in open arenas where they're generally easy to avoid, so that doesn't really add much of interest either. But these are minor gripes. I really enjoy the combat in this game, and this game has the best combat animation of any turn-based game I have ever played. My favorite overall presentation of any RPG combat system, and one of the most fun in general. And the combat system is at its peak in boss fights. The sheer spectacle of some of these fights is jaw-dropping. Attacks descend down as if we are fighting against the personification of a natural disaster. The precision and focus required to parry a deadly combo or one of these towering attacks means that parrying feels fucking amazing. There are a couple of fights I just plain love looking at, but the final boss of Act 2, a narrative and gameplay peak, is a contender for one of the best looking fights in any game ever. And what brings this whole experience together is the music. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is one of the best soundtracks I have ever heard in a game. The soundtrack is an 8-hour long epic with a massive 109 tracks. One notable genre for the soundtrack is French classical music with orchestral backing, often with sort of bittersweet or melancholy tone brought by the piano and the strings. But if there's one thing more French than classical music, it's a baguette. Oh, and electronic music, of course. As soon as I felt like I was getting used to the soundtrack, then all of a sudden the game punches me in the face with this electronic banger. The game's soundtrack isn't perpetually sad, it comes through with these fun bouncy songs while exploring, or surprises with some fantastic jazz. There's a wide variety of genres. Different areas in the game always have different tracks for exploration, combat, and bosses, always fitting the situations. The soundtrack of the aforementioned underwater area does make me think of water as well. And nowhere does the soundtrack hit harder than the boss fights. The ups and downs of the songs encapsulate the feeling of overcoming overwhelming odds. As the song crescendos, these tracks are the embodiment of "in the midst of it's so over, I found within me, and invincible, we are so back." Another part of the game where the music is used to perfection is the story. I have avoided talking about the story of the game beyond the initial setup so far, so let's talk about it. A spoiler-free version of my thoughts would be this. I have already praised characters and the prologue in terms of writing. The game maintains that quality throughout. The main plot is also focused and is generally well paced, and the storytelling itself is pretty clever. And the story is pretty unique in how it's told. There's a plot twist at the end of the second act that is so well done that when I first played it, I was slack-jawed with awe for the whole sequence. And whenever I think back to it, I just grin thinking about how smartly it was pulled off. Overall, I was very impressed. It's a story-based experience in the form of a game, and it uses this format exceptionally well. The themes about loss, escapism, overcoming hardship, and creating bonds are told in an often gut-wrenching fashion. It's a depressing story, but not hopeless. I do have a couple small problems with the story though. First being a pacing issue. There's a sense of dissonance in the third act. While story-wise and balance-wise, I should be rushing to the final boss, but that's also why the map opens up in a way that almost doubles the amount of content available. But if I do spend a considerable amount of time beating that content, I have to artificially reduce my party's strength. I stopped using my strongest pictos and had about 20 levels worth of unassigned points to make the last area even somewhat of a challenge. Then there's the bigger issue of world building, an aspect of which was left intentionally vague and on which the entire ending of the game hinges on. So let's get into the details. There will be spoilers ahead. Expedition 33 is a story about grief. how one manages to carry on after facing unthinkable loss. Grief is the link that connects everyone in this world. We start off with the Gomaj, an event synonymous with everyone losing their loved ones. And then even among the survivors, the disaster on the beach wipes out a large number of them. But the group of Gustav, Mael, Lune and Ciel slowly make their way through the continent, getting stronger as they progress. And this creates a strong bond among them as they know the sheer scale of what they have to overcome. Even that does not last for long. Gustav all of a sudden was attacked by the white-haired man, the same white-haired man that annihilated the expedition back at the shore.
It's more about...
Gustav takes a last stand, but it doesn't work. And as the killing blow was coming towards Mael after Gustav's death, she was saved at the last moment by a mysterious stranger, Verso. Mael, who lost her parents to the Gomaj while she was just 3 years old. She couldn't find a foster family she fit in till she was adopted by Gustav and his sister. When she finally found someone she could rely on as her guardian and friend.
You can talk to me, you know. A family. Well, that's what the paperwork says, at least.
Well, the paperwork probably says we're dead too, so...
Yeah, probably. Ooh, nice one.
I know.
I told you, don't get cocky. It was... okay.
You taught me great.
She lost him.
I wish we could...
Rest easy, Gustav.
I'll finish what you started. The paintress, Renoir, they will pay.
No more dome. Just open skies.
I'll save them, Gustav. Emma, your apprentices, everyone.
You can leave it to us.
Later, we learn more about Verso and the white-haired man. Verso is from Expedition 0, the very first expedition, and Renoir, the white-haired man, is his father. Both Renoir, Verso, and her sister Alicia have turned immortal and stopped aging. Renoir, believing this to be a gift from the paintress and to protect her family, has taken up arms against every expedition since. But Verso doesn't want that. He has grown tired of immortality, seeing everyone he cared about die over and over again while he lives on. So he joins the expedition to take down Renoir and the paintress. They recruit Esquier and Monaco, fight off two ultra-powerful beings called Axons, and after gaining enough strength, they succeed in their goal. They go back to Lumiere to give everyone the good news, but while the others are busy celebrating, Verso sneaks off reading a letter from Alicia. And then the reality of the situation reveals itself. Renoir was the one destroying the world, and the paintress was doing her hardest to protect it. And Verso, by hiding this fact, has doomed the world. But then the camera pulls back further and we wake up as Mael. Except it is not Mael, it's Alicia, a girl that looks like Mael but has severe burn scars. The burn has also taken one of her eyes. In this segment, as we slowly explore the Descendre family manor with her, we realize what was going on. Alicia's brother, the real Verso, died while saving Alicia from a fire. And the Verso in the painting, just a painted recreation of the Verso in the real world. Aline Desandre, the paintress, clings onto the last remnant of Verso's soul in the painting. She can't cope with his death. And Renoir fights her in the painted battlefield, hoping to bring her back to the real world as she is slowly losing herself in this fantasy world. But they are locked in a stalemate, and Alicia jumps into the painting to help Renoir and wakes up as Mael. After the paintress is defeated and Aline is not in the painting anymore, Alicia talks to Renoir and is horrified hearing that Renoir wants to destroy the canvas.
She'll never willingly part with it.
No.
For the sake of the living, we must part with the dead.
No, Papa. See, I hid the
She
canvas.
will always find it.
She cannot let Renoir destroy the last part of Verso's soul, a world where she found a new life in.
Mum, I'm not going to lose myself if I stay.
I know full well you will, and I am not doing this again!
With her newfound powers as a painter herself, Mael revives Lune and Cyr. And with Monaco and Verso still present in the world, she wages her own war against Renoir, a war for the existence of this canvas, while Renoir is still weakened after fighting Aline for so long.
Put aside the canvas. It's killing you both.
Not this time!
They defeat Renoir, and Mael convinces him that she just wants to be here a bit longer.
I cannot lose you too.
You see, that's how I feel about them. I can't lose them either. I've lost too much. Papa, see, I've lost so much.
We both lost so much.
Papa, I don't want to lose you either. I'm not leaving you forever. Just a little longer.
I'm sorry. See things as they are.
And now we have to choose whether we take Verso's side or Mael's in this battle. Verso takes Renoir's side and the side of Verso's soul in the painting that wants to stop painting.
You're tired of painting, aren't you? I'm tired too.
He is tired of being in a world, seeing everyone he cared about die. He has gotten tired of living over his 100-year life. He wants Mael to return back to her life as Alicia and to not spend the rest of her life eternally engaged in escapism. But Mael doesn't want to return to real life. She had her face burned, lost an eye, and most importantly, lost her brother. She has crafted a life for herself in this, and she wants to hold on to everyone in here. This choice comes down to one thing: whether everyone in the painting is akin to something in the artist's head, like a character in a movie or a book, or if they're as real as anyone else but just stuck in a painting. If the former is not the case, if everyone in the painting is a sentient human being, then it's clear that the answer is to save the painting and take Mael's side. Here it will break the Desandre family apart. But compared to the sufferings that the residents of Lumiere had gone through. And then there's another problem. If that is the case, if they are humans, wasn't what Renoir was doing mass murder? At worst, it's downright evil. At best, it's negligent towards the good of thousands of actual humans. I do consider the fact that none of these characters making their own case for the canvas to survive for their own sake is an actual flaw of the writing. I can understand it being vague to give more of a grey shade to the final choice as the reality remains unclear, but the fact that when confronted with the existential crisis of a revelation, the character's reactions are somewhat mild seems weird.
You lived among us.
But if it's intentional, then this choice becomes incredibly clever and ties into the verso ending. So, where's the problem? The thing is that you can find evidence in the game support Miles' ending as well. So, this is kind of like the game having its cake and eating it too. Because these two things cannot happen parallelly. The fact that the game didn't confront the huge question of the man versus God aspect of the story is still disappointing. But I chose the verso ending because I do believe that these characters aren't real in the same sense as people in the real world. And there's a few reasons for that. For one, they don't really make a case for their existence as a reason to keep the painting intact, like I said before. But rather, they just back Mile up. Secondly, Verso wanted to die. The way he's playing the piano with a pained, empty expression in the Mile ending seems to be more based on a world that Mile/Alicia wished and painted into existence rather than of his free will. But my take is not definitive. It's just my interpretation. If you do believe the opposite, Miles' ending makes perfect sense. So Mile returns to the real world. She's back to being Alicia. She has to overcome grief and face reality, but the Desandre family is together now. She is not alone. Expedition 33 can be a pretty bleak and sad experience, but it's also charming and has a lot of heart. It's an easy game to recommend. The game has beautiful visuals and a fantastic soundtrack. It has a really well written and interesting story, fun gameplay, and it's a debut project from a studio with a modest budget. It's an ambitious game, and the talent and love put into making this sees this ambition translate into greatness. I feel like this game is going to become a classic in the coming years. Hopefully this is just the start of something great for Sandfall Interactive.